The Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire was one of the most important campaigns in the Spanish colonization of the Americas. After years of preliminary exploration and military skirmishes, 168 Spanish soldiers under Francisco Pizarro and the native allies captured the Sapa Inca Atahuallpa in the 1532 Battle of Cajamarca. It was the first step in a long campaign that took decades of fighting but ended in Spanish victory in 1572 and colonization of the region as the Viceroyalty of Peru. The conquest of the Inca Empire led to spin-off campaigns into present-day Chile and Colombia, as well as expeditions towards the Amazon basin. When the Spanish arrived at the borders of the Inca Empire in 1528, it spanned a considerable distance, extending southward from the Ancamello, which is now known as the Pacha River in southern Colombia, to the Maule River in Chile, and eastward from the Pacific Ocean to the edge of the Amazonian jungles. The empire covered some of the most mountainous terrain on Earth. In less than a century, the Inca had expanded their empire from about 400,000 square kilometers in 1448 to 1,800,000 square kilometers in 1528, just before the arrival of the Spaniards. This vast area of land varied greatly in cultures and in climate. Because of the diverse cultures and geography, the Inca allowed many areas of the empire to be governed under the control of local leaders, who were watched and monitored by Inca officials. However, under the administrative mechanisms established by the Inca, all parts of the empire answered to, and were ultimately under the direct control of, the emperor. Scholars estimate that the population of the Inca Empire numbered more than 16 million. Some scholars, such as Jared Diamond, believe that while the Spanish conquest was undoubtedly the proximate cause of the collapse of the Inca Empire, it may very well have been past its peak and already in the process of decline. In 1528, Emperor Juan Nakapag ruled the Inca Empire. He could trace his lineage back to a stranger king named Manco Capac, the mythical founder of the Inca clan, who according to tradition emerged from a cave in a region called Pacritambo. Huayna Capac was the son of the previous ruler Tupac Inca and the grandson of Pachacuti, the emperor who had begun the dramatic expansion by conquest of the Inca Empire from its base in the area around Cusco. On his accession to the throne, Huayna Capac had continued the policy of expansion by conquest, taking Inca armies north into what is today Ecuador. While he had to put down a number of rebellions during his reign, by the time of his death, his legitimacy was as unquestioned as was the primacy of Inca power. Expansion had resulted in its own problems, however. Many parts of the empire maintained distinctive cultures, and these were at best restive participants in the imperial project. The large extent of the empire, the extremely difficult terrain of much of it, and the fact that all communication and travel had to take place on foot or by boat, seems to have caused increasing difficulty in the Incas' effective administration of the empire. Huayna Capac relied on his sons to support his reign. While he had many legitimate and illegitimate children, two sons are historically important. Prince Tupac Atahuallpa, also known as Huáscar, was the son of Coyamimara Huaraclo of the royal line. The second was Atahuallpa, an illegitimate son who was likely born of a daughter of the last independent king of Quito, one of the states conquered by Huayna Capac during the expansion of the Inca Empire. These two sons would play pivotal roles in the final years of the Inca Empire. The Spanish conquistador Pizarro and his men were greatly aided in their enterprise by invading when the Inca Empire was in the midst of a war of succession between the princes Huáscar and Atahuallpa. Atahuallpa seems to have spent more time with Huayna Capac during the years when he was in the north with the army conquering Ecuador. Atahuallpa was thus closer to, and had better relations with the army and its leading generals. When both Huayna Capac and his eldest son and designated heir, Yoshik, died suddenly in 1528 from what was probably smallpox, a disease introduced by the Spaniards into the Americas as they conquered Mexico, the question of who would succeed as emperor was thrown open. Huayna had died before he could nominate the new heir. At the time of Huayna Capac's death, Huáscar was in the capital Cusco, while Atahuallpa was in Quito with the main body of the Inca army. Huáscar had himself proclaimed Sapa Inca in Cusco, but the army declared its loyalty to Atahuallpa. The resulting dispute led to the Inca Civil War. Chronology of Events through the last years of the Inca Empire, 1526 to 1529. Francisco Pizarro and Diego de Almagro make first contact with Inca Empire at Tumbes, the northernmost Inca stronghold along the coast. c. 1528, the Inca Emperor Huayna Capac dies from European-introduced smallpox. Death sets off a civil war between his sons, Atahuallpa and Huáscar. 1528 to 1529, Pizarro returns to Spain where he is granted by the Queen of Spain the license to conquer Peru. 1531 to 1532, Pizarro's third voyage to Peru, Atahuallpa captured by Spaniards. 1533, Atahuallpa is executed. Almagro arrives, Pizarro captures Cusco and installs 17-year-old Manco Inca as new Inca emperor. 1535, Pizarro founded the city of Lima. Almagro leaves for Chile. 1536, Gonzalo Pizarro steals Manco Inca's wife, Cura. Manco rebels and surrounds Cusco. Juan Pizarro is killed, and Inca General Quizo Yupanqui attacks Lima. 1537, Almagro seizes Cusco from Hernando and Gonzalo Pizarro. Rodrigo Orgaz sacks Vicos and captures Manco Inca's son, Titu Cuzi. Manco escapes and flees to Vilcabamba, which became the capital of the Neo-Inca state. 1538, Hernando Pizarro executes Diego de Almagro. 1539, Gonzalo Pizarro invades and sacks Vilcabamba. Manco Inca escapes but Francisco Pizarro executes Manco's wife, Cura. 1541, Francisco Pizarro is murdered by Diego de Almagro II and other supporters of Almagro. 1544, Manco Inca is murdered by supporters of Diego de Almagro. The Inca do not stop the revolt. 1572, Viceroy of Peru, Francisco Toledo, declares war on the Neo-Inca state. Vilcabamba is sacked and Tupac Amaru, the last Inca emperor, is captured and executed in Cusco. The Inca capital of Vilcabamba is abandoned. The Spaniards remove inhabitants and relocate them to the newly established Christian town of San Francisco de la Victoria de Vilcabamba. Beginning of the conflict. The civil war between Atahuallpa and Huáscar weakened the empire immediately prior to its struggle with the Spanish. Historians are unsure of whether a united Inca Empire could have defeated the Spanish in the long term due to factors such as the high mortality from disease and its related social disruption, and the superior military technology of the Spaniards, who possessed horses, metal armor, swords, cannons, and primitive but effective firearms. Atahuallpa appeared to be more popular with the people than his brother, and he was certainly more valued by the army, the core of which was based in the recently conquered northern province of Quito. At the outset of the conflict, each brother controlled his respective domains, with Atahuallpa secure in the north, and Huáscar controlling the capital of Cusco and the large area to the south, including the area around Lake Titicaca. This area had supplied large numbers of troops for his forces. After a period of diplomatic posturing and jockeying for position, open warfare soon broke out. Huáscar seemed poised to bring the war to a rapid conclusion, as troops loyal to him took Atahuallpa prisoner while he was attending a festival in the city of Chumabamba. However, Atahuallpa quickly escaped and returned to Quito. There he was able to amass what is estimated to be at least 30,000 soldiers. While Huáscar managed to muster about the same number of soldiers, they were less experienced. Atahuallpa sent his forces south under the command of two of his leading generals, Cholcachima and Quisquas, who won an uninterrupted series of victories that soon brought them to the very gates of Cusco. On the first day of the battle for Cusco, the forces loyal to Huáscar gained an early advantage. However, on the second day Huáscar personally led an ill-advised surprise attack, of which the generals Cholcachima and Quisquas had advanced knowledge. In the ensuing battle Huáscar was captured, and resistance completely collapsed. The victorious generals sent word north by Chasqui messenger to Atahuallpa, who had moved south from Quito to the royal resort springs outside Cajamarca. The messenger arrived with news of the final victory on the same day that Pizarro and his small band of adventurers, together with some Indian allies, descended from the Andes into the town of Cajamarca. Arrival of Pizarro. Francisco Pizarro and his brothers were attracted by the news of a rich and fabulous kingdom. They had left the then impoverished Extremadura, like many migrants after them. In 1529, Francisco Pizarro obtained permission from the Spanish monarchy to conquer the land they called Peru. According to historian Raúl Porras Barranecchia, Peru is not a Quechuan nor Caribbean word, but Indo-Hispanic hybrid. Unknown to Pizarro, as he was lobbying for permission to mount an expedition, his proposed enemy was being devastated by the diseases brought to the American continents during earlier Spanish contacts. When Pizarro arrived in Peru in 1532, he found it vastly different from when he had been there just 5 years before. Amid the ruins of the city of Tumbes, he tried to piece together the situation before him. From two young local boys whom he had taught how to speak Spanish in order to translate for him, Pizarro learned of the civil war and of the disease that was destroying the Inca Empire. After 4 long expeditions, Pizarro established the first Spanish settlement in northern Peru, calling it San Miguel de Pura. When first spotted by the natives, Pizarro and his men were thought to be Viracocha Cuna, or gods. The Indians described Pizarro's men to the Inca. They said that Capito was tall with a full beard and was completely wrapped in clothing. The Indians described the men's swords and how they killed sheep with them. The men did not eat human flesh, but rather sheep, lamb, duck, pigeons, and deer, and cooked the meat. Atahuallpa was fearful of what the white men were capable of. If they were Reconquest or destroyers of peoples, then he should flee. If they were Viracocha Cuna Alachak, or gods who are benefactors of the people, then he should not flee, but welcome them. The messengers went back to Tangarala, and Atahuallpa sent Cincanchera, an Orefon warrior, to the Spanish to serve as an interpreter. After traveling with the Spanish, Cincanchera returned to Atahuallpa. They discussed whether or not the Spanish men were gods. Cincanchera decided they were men because he saw them eat, drink, dress, and have relations with women. He saw them produce no miracles. Cincanchera informed Atahuallpa that they were small in number, about 170 to 180 men, and had bound the Indian captives with iron ropes. When Atahuallpa asked what to do about the strangers, Cincanchera said that they should be killed because they were evil thieves who took whatever they wanted, and were supicuna or devils. He recommended trapping the men inside of the sleeping quarters and burning them to death. At this point, Pizarro had 168 men under his command, 106 on foot and 62 on horses. Pizarro sent his captain Hernando de Soto to invite Atahuallpa to a meeting. Soto rode to meet Atahuallpa on his horse, an animal that Atahuallpa had never seen before, with one of his young interpreters. Soto read a prepared speech to Atahuallpa telling him that they had come as servants of God to teach them the truth about God's word. He said he was speaking to them so that they might lay the foundation of concord, brotherhood, and perpetual peace that should exist between us, so that you may receive us under your protection and hear the divine law from us, and all your people may learn and receive it, for it will be the greatest honor, advantage, and salvation to them all. Atahuallpa responded only after Hernando Pizarro arrived. He replied with what he had heard from his scouts, saying that Pizarro and his men were killing and enslaving countless numbers on the coast. Pizarro denied the report, and Atahuallpa, with limited information, reluctantly let the matter go. At the end of the meeting, the men agreed to meet the next day at Cajamarca. Capture of Atahuallpa. After his victory and the death of his brother Huáscar, Atahuallpa was fasting in the Inca baths outside Cajamarca. Pizarro and his men reached that city on the 15th of November 1532. Pizarro sent Hernando de Soto and Hernando Pizarro to the Inca leader's camp. Hernando Pizarro and de Soto explained they were emissaries of Emperor Charles I of Spain, to offer the services, and impart to him the doctrines of the true faith. Quote, additionally, they invited the Incan leader to visit Pizarro at his quarters along the Cajamarca Plaza. Atahuallpa replied that his fast would end the next day, when he would visit Pizarro. When de Soto noticed Atahuallpa's interest in his horse, he put on a display of excellent horsemanship in close proximity. Atahuallpa displayed hospitality by serving refreshments. The next morning, Pizarro had arranged an ambuscade around the Cajamarca Plaza, where they were to meet. When Atahuallpa arrived with about 6,000 unarmed followers, Friar Vicente de Valverde and Felipe met them and proceeded to expound the doctrines of the true faith and seek his tribute as a vassal of King Charles. The unskilled translator likely contributed to problems in communication. The friar offered Atahuallpa the Bible as the authority of what he had just stated. Atahuallpa stated, "I will be no man's tributary." The friar urged attack, starting the Battle of Cajamarca on the 16th of November 1532. Though the historical accounts relating to these circumstances vary, the true Spanish motives for the attack seem to be a desire for loot and flat-out impatience. The Inca likely did not adequately understand the conquistadors' demands. At the signal to attack, the Spaniards unleashed volleys of gunfire at the vulnerable mass of Incas and surged forward in a concerted action. The effect was devastating. The shocked Incas offered such feeble resistance that the battle has often been labeled a massacre, with the Inca losing 2,000 dead. Pizarro also used cavalry charges against the Inca forces, which stunned them in combination with gunfire. The majority of Atahuallpa's troops were in the Cusco region along with Quisquis and Chalcachima, the two generals he trusted the most. This was a major disadvantage for the Inca. Their undoing also resulted from a lack of self-confidence, and a desire to make public demonstration of fearlessness and godlike command of situation. The main view was that the Inca were eventually defeated due to inferior weapons, open battle tactics, disease, internal unrest, the bold tactics of the Spanish, and the capture of their emperor. While Spanish armor was very effective against most of the Andean weapons, it was not impenetrable to maces, clubs, or slings. However, ensuing hostilities such as the Mixtan Rebellion, Chichimeca War, and and Arco War would require that the conquistadors ally with friendly tribes in these later expeditions. The battle began with a shot from a cannon and the battle cry, Santiago. Many of the guns used by the Spaniards were hard to use in the frequent close combat situations. Most natives adapted in guerrilla fashion, by only shooting at the legs of the conquistadors if they happened to be unarmed. During Atahuallpa's captivity, the Spanish, although greatly outnumbered, forced him to order his generals to back down by threatening to kill him if he did not. According to the Spanish envoy's demands, Atahuallpa offered to fill a large room with gold and promised the Spanish twice that amount in silver, while Pizarro ostensibly accepted this offer and allowed the gold to pile up. He had no intention of releasing the Inca. He needed Atahuallpa's influence over his generals and the people in order to maintain the peace. When Atahuallpa was captured at the massacre at Cajamarca, he was treated with respect, allowed his wives to join him, and the Spanish soldiers taught him the game of chess. Francisco Pizarro sent his brother Hernando to gather gold and silver from the temples in Cajamarca in January 1533, and on his return in March, captured Chalcachimac in the Jayu Valley. Francisco Pizarro sent a similar expedition to Cusco, bringing back many gold plates from the Temple of the Sun. By February 1533, Almagro had joined Pizarro in Cajamarca with an additional 150 men with 50 horses. Pizarro held Atahuallpa for a ransom of gold and silver. The treasure began to be delivered from Cusco on the 20th of December 1532 and flowed steadily from then on. By the 3rd of May 1533, Pizarro received all the treasure he had requested. It was melted, refined, and made into bars. The question eventually came up of what to do with Atahuallpa. Both Pizarro and Soto were against killing him, but the other Spaniards were loud in the demands for death. False interpretations from the interpreter Filipino made the Spaniards paranoid. They were told that Atahuallpa had ordered secret attacks and his warriors were hidden in the surrounding area. Soto went with a small army to look for the hidden army, but a trial for Atahuallpa was held in his absence. Among the charges were polygamy, incestuous marriage, and idolatry, all frowned upon in Catholicism but common in Inca culture and religion. The men who were against Atahuallpa's conviction and murder argued that he should be judged by King Charles since he was the sovereign prince. Atahuallpa agreed to accept baptism to avoid being burned at the stake, and in the hopes of one day rejoining his army and killing the Spanish, he was baptized as Francisco. On the 29th of August 1533, Atahuallpa was garroted and died a Christian. He was buried with Christian rites in the Church of San Francisco at Cajamarca, but was soon disinterred. His body was taken, probably at his prior request, to its final resting place in Quito. Upon de Soto's return, he was furious. He had found no evidence of any secret gathering of Atahuallpa's warriors. Pizarro advanced with his army of 500 Spaniards toward Cusco, accompanied by Chalcachimac. The latter was burned alive in the Jayu Valley, accused of secret communication with Quizquiz and organizing resistance. Manco Inca Yupanqui joined Pizarro after the death of Tupac Amaru. Pizarro's force entered the heart of the Tawantinsuyu on the 15th of November 1533. Benalcazar, Pizarro's lieutenant and fellow extreme Maturan, had already departed from San Miguel with 140 foot soldiers and a few horses on his conquering mission to Ecuador. At the foot of Mount Chimborazo, near the modern city of Riobamba, he met and defeated the forces of the great Inca warrior Ruminawi with the aid of Canary tribesmen who served as guides and allies to the conquering Spaniards. Ruminawi fell back to Quito, and, while in pursuit of the Inca army, Benalcazar was joined by 500 men led by Guatemalan governor Pedro de Alvarado. Greedy for gold, Alvarado had set sail for the south without the crown's authorization, landed on the Ecuadorian coast, and marched inland to the Sierra. Finding Quito empty of its treasures, Almagro soon joined the combined Spanish force. Alvarado agreed to sell his fleet of 12 ships, his forces, plus arms and ammunition, and returned to Guatemala. Rebellion and Reconquest. After Atahuallpa's execution, Pizarro installed Atahuallpa's brother, Atahualpa, as a puppet Inca ruler, but he soon died unexpectedly, leaving Manco Inca Yupanqui in power. He began his rule as an ally of the Spanish and was respected in the southern regions of the empire, but there was still much unrest in the north near Quito where Atahualpa's generals were amassing troops. Atahualpa's death meant that there was no hostage left to deter these northern armies from attacking the invaders. Led by Atahualpa's generals Rumanahu, Ixtopzupahua and Quisquas, the native armies were finally defeated, effectively ending any organized rebellion in the north of the empire. Archaeological evidence of the rebellion incident exists. The remains of about 70 men, women, and adolescents were found in the path of a planned expressway near Lima in 2007. Forensic evidence suggests that the natives were killed by European weapons, probably during the uprising in 1536. Manco Inca initially had good relations with Francisco Pizarro and several other Spanish conquistadors. However, in 1535 he was left in Cusco under the control of Pizarro's brothers Juan and Gonzalo, who so mistreated Manco Inca that he ultimately rebelled. Under the pretense of recovering a statue of pure gold in the nearby Yuki Valley, Manco was able to escape Cusco. Manco Inca hoped to use the disagreement between Almagro and Pizarro to his advantage and attempted the recapture of Cusco starting in Feb. 1536. The siege of Cusco was waged until the following spring, and during that time Manco's armies managed to wipe out 4 relief columns sent from Lima, but was ultimately unsuccessful in its goal of routing the Spaniards from the city. The Inca leadership did not have the full support of all its subject peoples, and furthermore, the degrading state of Inca morale coupled with the superior Spanish siege weapons soon made Manco Inca realize his hope of recapturing Cusco was failing. Manco Inca eventually withdrew to Tambo. After the Spanish regained control of Cusco, Manco Inca and his armies retreated to the fortress at Ollantaytambo, where he, for a time, successfully launched attacks against Pizarro based at Cusco and even managed to defeat the Spanish in an open battle. When it became clear that defeat was imminent, Manco Inca retreated further to the mountainous region of Vilcabamba and established the small Neo-Inca state, where Manco Inca and his successors continued to hold some power for several more decades. His son, Tupac Amaru, was the last Inca. After deadly confrontations, he was murdered by the Spanish in 1572. In total, the conquest took about 40 years to complete. Many Inca attempts to regain the empire had occurred, but none had been successful. Thus the Spanish conquest was achieved through relentless force and deception, aided by factors like smallpox and a great communication and cultural divide. The Spaniards destroyed much of the Incan culture and introduced the Spanish culture to the native population.